So my dad grabbed the broomstick and started swinging like a baseball bat at me wildly. My mom said, there's your dad, and pointed to him, and I ran up to shake his hand. And I remember saying these words, I know you're my dad, but you don't look like my dad.
When you encountered God, this was the first time that you felt true acceptance. You said it was as if he was hugging you.
I said, no, I'm serious. I just found what we're all looking for.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Honest Podcast. Our main goal here is to reach and impact as many people as possible. So please like, subscribe, but most importantly, share this with as many people as you can who you think it'll encourage. We greatly appreciate it. And now on to the show. Hey, Dad.
Hey, son.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Here we are at the table. I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're really busy, so thank you for being with me and having a conversation with me. There's so much to talk about.
Yes.
And I really just wanted to start with your story, which I think is such a powerful story. Everyone has a story, first of all. And of course, my story and yours are starkly different than each other, but many people can relate probably to your story. And so just wanted to start there and talk a little bit about where you were born, when you were born, and your journey to America. So
before I begin, I just want to say I think this is a very prophetic podcast, because I think we're demonstrating Malachi 4, 5, and 6, turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and hearts of the children to the fathers. But it's also Luke 1:17, where he's going to send the prophet Elijah, the anointing of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children. But it says the disobedient to the wisdom of the just or the righteous. And I feel there are a lot of young people out there that really need wisdom and guidance, and really comes from God. It comes from the Bible. And I feel, being a pastor now for almost 47 years, I can contribute. So I'm really excited to do this with you, because you're my son, my firstborn.
Your only son?
Your only son.
Your
right?
one and only son.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to quote the words of our Heavenly Father, but But the thing too, when you said that, just made me think of just our relationship. You know, and of course, just like any relationship, there's highs and lows and ups and downs. And but I'm very grateful to the Lord that I can honestly say that you're one of my best friends.
Yes.
And you're one of my heroes. And
you're one of my heroes.
I can't believe I'm sitting here thinking even just of my life, and turning 45 in a couple months, and you're turning 70 in January, and it's just the years of relationship that we've had. And of course, being your only son, I think there was, of course, a different dynamic between the two of us, and the way we were able to travel together and whatnot, for example. But I just want to say I'm so grateful that you, and I know you're going to get into your story, but you intentionally took the time and made the effort to raise me in the fear and the admonition of the Lord, as the Bible says. And
well, it was more your mom, but I received some of the credit. And no, really, it's the grace of God. He'd so changed me, because I didn't have that growing up, and I'll get into the story, because my dad was absent, not because he wanted to, but it began with even when I was born, he wasn't there, because my mother wanted to have a home birth, and she wanted her stepmom, which was my grandmother. She was a registered nurse, very unusual for a Korean woman at that period, after the Korean War, to have a degree in college, let alone to get a nursing degree. So she was a nurse, she was a midwife, and she wanted to, actually, I think my stepmom suggested, so why don't you allow me to deliver the baby? And why don't you come down to our town, Gwangju, which was 2 hours from Seoul, where we're living, and let me deliver. And so she said, well, listen, why don't you stay the last month of your pregnancy, because we don't know when it's going to be, and you can't take the bus down at the last minute. And so my mom, with my sister, who was already born, she was like 2 years old at that time, moved down to Gwangju with my grandparents. And when the time was that I was delivered, And this was a huge deal because I was a boy, a firstborn male in the Asian culture. You know, that's what they want, is big time.
Yeah.
And not only that, but mom, her firstborn was a miscarriage. It was a boy. And
Oh,
so
I didn't
then
know
Chung
that.
Hae was born. And then when I was born, and again, I don't think they knew how to diagnose. They didn't have sonograms back in the 50s. I was born in 56. And so when I came out, it was a time of tremendous celebration. So my dad was contacted. He was on the way. He had to take a bus from Seoul to Gwangju. So he was en route, but he wasn't there when I was born. And so my mom told me that when I was born, that my grandfather, who was an elder of a church at that time in his city, later they moved to Seoul and became elders of Yongnam Presbyterian Church, he dedicated me to the Lord because he was a very godly man. And my mom told me that when she was pregnant with me, she had a dream that I was going to be a pastor. So in many ways, I didn't have a chance. You know, I'm going to get saved and come to know the Lord. And of course, you still have to make a choice because, you know, as Billy Graham says, God has no spiritual grandchildren. Each generation has to make a decision, even though I came from a very godly heritage. But my dad wasn't there when I was too small to really connect with him because my mom was nursing me the first 2 years. And then he applied to be a pastor in America and he got it. And you have to realize, that, I don't know how many people apply, but everyone wanted to leave Korea because of the impoverishment from two wars, World War II and Korean War. So they had just gone back to back with two wars, and they were just so impoverished. And so my dad applied to be a pastor of the first Korean Southern Baptist pastor in all of North America. There was not one church in Canada, not one Southern Baptist Korean church in the United States. And so he got the job, which was like winning the lotto, because it was your ticket out to live the American dream. And so my dad left in 1958. So I was 2 years old when he left. And we did not get our visa. We thought we were going to join him right away, but it took us almost 3 years to get the visa for my mother, my sister, and me to join him. So it was not until November 1960, which was a few months from my 5th birthday. So I was basically 5. And so that's when I saw him. And so
how many years? That's what, almost 3 years?
Almost 3 years.
Not seeing your dad. And of course, this is back in the 50s, so no FaceTime.
There's no FaceTime. There was a faded photo, a black and white photo of my dad and mom getting married. And that was the only photo I had of it. And as a little boy, you know, you're 2, you're 3, it's not something that I was looking at all the time. It wasn't like, and so I really forgot what he looked like. And so I remember, it's amazing the things you remember. When I met him at the airport, and it wasn't like in the terminal, it was one of those airplanes that landed, you came down, and they greeted you from the greeting area out of the building, the terminal. And so my dad ran up, and my mom said, there's your dad, and pointed to him, and I ran up to shake his hand.
You went to shake your father's hand.
Yeah, right.
And of course, you're putting the pieces together.
It was this total stranger to me, but my mom said, that's your dad, go shake your hand. And I remember saying these words, I know you're my dad, but you don't look like my dad. So the mouth of a 5-year-old stayed with me. And so that also crazy. Began the journey of really having a distant relationship with my dad, because now he has a family of 4. And then my mom got pregnant right away, the reunion baby, my brother.
Sure.
So he was born when I was 6. And my dad was just trying to survive as an immigrant.
So just to put this in context, first of all, where was the location your father was able to get?
So we were at the National Baptist Church, it's a Southern Baptist church on 16th Street. I'm talking about minutes from the White House.
Okay,
so it was downtown.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah, Washington, D.C.
All right.
And I've been to that building many times just to reminisce that this is a church that my dad was.
That's incredible.
Now, we didn't pastor the American church. We had a small chapel for the Koreans to use.
I see.
And it was a very unusual church because it was just all students, because the Korean government had sent top students, they're brilliant, to Washington, D.C. to rebuild the country. And so they majored in economics, public policy, public administration, and to learn and to help rebuild. But they were transient. So they were there until they got their degree, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. And they weren't married, they were all single. And so there were no kids.
Right.
So it wasn't like I grew up in a community of other Korean my age. So it was like my sister and I were the only two in church that were kids.
You were the children's
We
ministry.
were the children's ministry, and there was no separation. We just sat in the pews, and it was absolutely boring for me because my parents encouraged me to immerse in the English language. And so they just said, watch TV and just, you got to learn English, you got to really study hard and all that. And so they encouraged me. And I could master English in three months. I was speaking English, and I enrolled in first grade. And
now, as you were learning English, were you losing Korean at the same time?
Of course, because both my parents were working.
Okay, so you weren't communicating to them.
So I wasn't having them come home.
Okay.
I was in bed by the time they got home.
Sure.
So there was no conversation. Again, because both had to work to survive. So it was a very unique situation, but I think God used all of that for the good in preparing me, because one of my biggest regrets, my dad's biggest regret, he said he didn't communicate with me and didn't talk to me in Korean. And he said that was the biggest mistake, because a lot of parents who are bilingual are intentional in speaking their native language so that the kids could grow up. And that was not even on my parents' radar.
His goal, it seems like, was just to work hard, provide for the family, which is in many ways the Korean thing to do, right?
Absolutely.
That's how you show love.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when you say that your parents, because you said plural, parents came home late at night, this assumes that my grandma, your mom, was working as well.
She did.
So what was your mom doing? And then your dad obviously had to provide for the family.
Yeah, my mom was a maid for a short period. My dad got a job as a dental technician. He had learned that trade in Japan when the Japanese had occupied. So up to 1945 was under Japanese occupation because they lost the war against us. Then Korea was free from the Japanese, because revival broke out in Korea in 1907, the same time Japan took over. And the revival...
This is in Pyongyang, right?
What is now North Korea, Pyongyang, is called the Pyongyang Revival. And interestingly enough, that was started by American missionaries who were there. Wow. So the American Protestant missionaries came in 1880, and they stayed there for almost 100 years with different missionaries coming. So my dad became a dental technician, and my mom was so savvy because she came from... Her dad, my grandfather, was a businessman. He was one of the wealthiest for that time in Korea. And she said, why don't you start your own business? Let me help you start it. So instead of working for another dental, why don't you start on dental laboratory, which she did. And so then she switched over from being a maid to helping him run the business. Okay. She was the secretary, basically. And she did all the accounting, everything. And so my dad just focused on the technical aspect of making crowns and bridges and false teeth. And so, and it became very successful. So we were really poor when we first came. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment on 16th Street near the church building, and we all slept on the floor, which was nothing unusual because that's what we did in Korea.
But not all in the same room. I mean,
no,
mom,
it was a one bedroom apartment. We slept in the living room, my sister and me, and my parents, of course, had their bedroom.
So you started in poverty.
Well, we didn't know. We had food. We were united. We were so happy. We tried things for the first time. Like, I remember the first time I ate a hot dog, I hated it.
Okay, you hated it.
I hated it. Now I love it.
Right.
But it was just a weird tasting. Right. Chocolate ice cream I thought was spoiled. I thought, this is such a bitter taste. This must be, something went wrong with it. As a little kid.
All the American, treats.
Now
so
my favorite ice cream is chocolate ice cream, right?
Sure.
And so anyway, but that was just the coming into a new culture, coming to America,
Right. You should have your own version coming to America.
Instead of Africa, but but.
So your mom and your dad worked essentially at one point together. And you were in school, which we'll talk about because that's a whole separate subject in and of itself. But they worked really hard. So your dad essentially was just really a pastor on the weekends, right? He would preach on Sunday, but then during the week, he was a dental technician.
Monday through Friday was down to, but the weekend he gave himself 100% to the church.
Okay.
And I remember every Saturday he would make phone calls to all the church members. We'll see you at church on Sunday and follow up on them. And he would do his follow-up on Saturday, new members. He would just call them up. Thank you for coming. And so that was his phone call days, would be like doing emails or text messaging.
Right. We would just mass text a bunch of people.
Yeah,
hey,
right,
make
exactly.
sure you're at church.
But no, it was a personal call.
That, yeah.
And it grew to be the largest Southern Baptist church, And so because when, especially in 6 to 8, by then, the immigration law had changed. Mm-hmm. And so you didn't need a special visa. Anyone could come if you applied for it and you qualified. And so that's when, under Johnson, all the Asian immigration really took off. And then Korea went just from a few hundred in Washington, D.C. when my dad arrived to thousands, and now maybe around 1 million now.
So just to give a little bit of a bird's eye view of the church scene, your dad, first Korean Southern Baptist pastor in all of North America / dentist probably. What a unique combination. And then the church grew to how many people do you think it eventually grew
Well,
to?
it went through several splits, and
Okay.
that was part of the thing that jaded me, because I saw the fighting in the church and just gave me a bad taste about Christianity, even though I didn't understand it. Now, my mom was very good at reading the Bible to me. And so she was the one that would take time out. It was a picture Bible. She knew I wouldn't understand King James or whatever, or even the Korean Bible. So she bought an American picture Bible, showed me pictures of Jesus, pictures of Moses in the Red Sea, Abraham. I mean, just the Old and New Testament picture Bible. And I was very drawn to it. Even back then, I was drawn to it. And I really believe that the foundation, the seed was planted in a strong way, because all the years I did, all the rebellion, my conscience was bothering me. I knew I was doing wrong. I knew I was sinning. And yet the devil had me and so deceived me that I just kept on getting worse and getting more rebellious. But in the early days, my parents were so busy, so I would come home. I was a latchkey kid before it was common among a lot. I just had a key, opened that door. My sister and I would come, and my sister basically raised me. She would cook dinner for me.
I see.
And my mom would have leftovers that we would have to eat. So she would make food and leave it. And there were times she would come and cook, but a lot of times it would be late. And so it would we were told to, make dinner, watch very little TV. We could watch in the afternoon when we came. Well, we did it anyway because they weren't around.
Right.
and then, it was amazing. Back then, they were very conscious of screen time, even for us.
Sure. But you're watching what, Bonanza?
But they were encouraging us to watch it so we can learn English.
Yeah, of course.
We then had to do whatever homework. And, when you're in early years of elementary, you don't have homework. It was later on that we had to, like third, fourth, fifth grade, sixth grade, that my sister had to help me with my homework, but my parents weren't, even if they were there, couldn't understand the English.
Right, because it was in English.
They wouldn't be able to help me out. So I really didn't have, so my sister basically raised me, and I'm grateful to this day. She was very, very smart. In fact, she was at the top of her class.
Valedictorian, right?
Valedictorian. She never got a B. she, not once in her life.
Incredible.
All throughout high school, straight A student, not one B. And my brother was like that. So my brother was born 6 years after me, right? But he was also just sharp, just straight A student. And he was top of his class too.
Yeah,
he was co-valedictorian with another student that had a 4.0 average.
No, because I chuckle because I know a little bit about your school years, which we'll talk about in a second. But you had a very smart older sister and a very smart younger brother.
Right.
But essentially your sister, for much of the time, raised you, or took care of you at least, because your parents were gone a lot of the day, or at least during the week.
And then later on, she would help me with my homework. But she, and I forgive her for this, but she did my homework for me.
Wow, okay. So let me just put this into perspective. Your dad's a pastor, right? Your sister's really smart, and she's cheating for you as a way probably to take care of you. It
was a shortcut, She
well, no wonder you didn't learn, because you had all your work done.
Exactly.
No.
Honestly, I feel that I was a slow learner.
Okay.
because other gifts were developing in me. You know,
Sure.
Einstein couldn't read it until he was 5 years old.
Right.
And he was really slow. But the other parts that were developing in me was leadership gifts.
I was going to say, you were a leader from the beginning.
I was a leader. I was always the most popular. I was leading my little gang of rebellious elementary kids. Seriously, you know, I remember in 4th grade, I would convince my friends to steal alcohol from their parents' bar. My parents didn't drink because they're Baptists, but we would steal beer and steal liquor, and we would go down the woods and get drunk and then play spin the bottle with the girls.
Okay, well, we got to back up a little bit because you just jumped to your, like,
I
you
mean,
skipped your whole...
who does that?
You
when
just
you're-
skipped right to puberty, basically.
I know, but who
So-
does that when you're in 4th grade, 5th
Right,
grade?
okay, well, maybe
And
you
so
weren't.
I was very mature,
Okay.
but not academically, but I
Sure.
was mature in my charisma to lead and to be popular and
You-
to
yeah,
influence.
you
Even
clearly
taught
had
my
other
sister
gifts.
doing my homework for me.
Yeah, right. You influenced your sister to do...
Yeah, so that was terrible.
But give me an idea a little bit of what, because I can imagine coming to America, you're a kid, obviously you still, I mean, for one, you trying to reconnect with your dad,
Yeah.
right? So that's on the family front. Your parents are working, they're very busy. But then you go to school, American school, and you said you quickly learned the English language, which
Yeah.
was really good. But also you're adapting to American culture, right? And so talk to me a little bit about what school you went to, what was that experience like?
My parents, because they started to prosper, they bought their first house when I was in, I believe it was, actually, honestly, there was a medical doctor who was the biggest giver and gave them a loan to buy their first house when I was in 1st grade. So we lived in the apartment just for like a year. So it was like very quickly we moved to Silver Spring, Maryland.
Okay.
It was a suburb, so it was a very nice suburb. I would say middle class, so it wasn't upper class, middle class. And the school I went to was a very good school because it was in Montgomery County. Now, Montgomery County, back in those days and even to this day, the 2 of the top academic counties are around Washington, D.C., Fairfax County and Virginia Montgomery County. They're rated highest as far as academic achievement from the students. They were drawn to that because they wanted to give us a good education. You know,
see.
obviously, so we didn't stay in D.C., we went to the suburb. And I went to this elementary school and I was shocked when I went in 1st grade because I didn't see anyone of color. I didn't see any other Asian.
Wow.
There was no blacks. My teachers were white. And it wasn't until I was in 5th grade, someone from outside broke the color barrier besides my sister and me. It was a girl from Afghanistan. It was the daughter of a diplomat.
Okay.
And so he moved to Washington, D.C. because he was a diplomat. He may have been the ambassador from Afghanistan because when she said, I'm from Afghanistan, I said, where is that? You know, I had no idea, and she had to teach me where Afghanistan is. She's a very, very smart girl. But that was in 5th grade. So there's another person of Asian background, so to speak.
Right. But still, even though there was one other person to
Yeah.
your remembrance, you still probably stood out, you and your sister.
Oh, I got in fights all the time. So let me tell you that part, because when I was starting, I mean, kids, they're not taught manners, you know. I mean, they eventually, as they get older, they learn. And
They'll just tell you whatever they want. They're thinking.
You know, and I remember they used to call me flat face, slanted eyes, and then of course they started to use the language, racist language, like you're a Jap, even though I'm not Japanese.
Right.
You're a Chink. Then the war in Vietnam is going on, so they call me Viet Cong. And so in the early days, because of my personality, I wouldn't take it. I stood up and I fought them. So I got in fights all the time. And sometimes my sister would join me because she was 2 years older and she was bigger than the kids my age, you know, because she...
What a great sister. She does your homework. She jumps into your fight.
She was. She loved me.
defends
And
you.
still
Yeah.
to this day, you know, we're very, very close.
Going back to your childhood, and this is important because one of the things I felt would be a great discussion topic, which happens to be a hot topic today. You know, we're talking about the 50s, but even today, as you know, there's racism.
So I
Right,
grew up in the
there's-
60s, right? And again, kids didn't know, and I didn't know, you know. But here's what the problem was. The problem was I wasn't receiving love from my parents. Not that they didn't love me, but they were absent. So I was looking for acceptance among my friends. and then to have these racist remarks and getting rejected even at school caused a tremendous insecurity in my heart and a tremendous drive to be accepted, you know? And so that led me to be a leader to be rebellious, to start almost like a revolution of rebellion at a young age. What would drive me to do drugs at such a young age and to show I'm cool? And you know, I mean, if you could be a great athlete, that would be one way. If you're academic, that'd be another way. But for me, I didn't have either of those. So I used my personality, my leadership gift, and I ended up becoming the most popular person. It was amazing. In 5th grade, this sounds so juvenile, it was juvenile. If I didn't like someone, I said, put the freeze on him, and everyone would not talk to him.
And when you say leader of your group, your gang, there was a group of troublemakers, a group of people
we
who
were
a
the
little
popular
bit like,
kids.
Okay.
We were the coolest kids, using that old terminology. I mean, that's not even, it's dated, you know, but in the 60s, 70s, during the Jesus People movement, we would say, yeah, he's cool, you know.
But you had so much influence that you could just say, put a freeze on that kid.
It got so bad that the teacher came to me, Mrs. Milo, and said, would you please unfreeze this, because he's really feeling so rejected. He's just depressed because no one will talk to him. And so she had to intervene by talking to me to unfreeze that situation.
But part of that reaction, whether it was fighting, right? Getting into physical fight, or retaliating in the sense of, well, you know, I've experienced rejection, so I reject you, or let's reject this person. Did it come from that place? Now that you look back, obviously when you were a kid, you probably didn't understand everything, but when it comes to insecurity, rejection, abandonment, all of that, the way that you exhibited, because all of us in life have faced rejection. We're going to talk a little bit about that to one degree or another. Well, we respond in different ways. We react in different ways.
I think it was more acute with me because my dad also had a violent temper.
Okay.
So this brings another dimension, is that, you know, he didn't know how to raise. No one taught him how to parent. And, you know, he was born in North Korea. He was a prisoner of war in Korea. He went through post-traumatic syndrome that he wouldn't talk about it, you know. And because I would ask him questions, what was it like to be in prison during the Korean War? What was it like to be in Korea during the Korean War? What was it like to be a kid growing up with World War II in your backyard with the Japanese? So he would never go there and talk about it, but I knew that he was very abused. Later on, he did open up and shared with me that because he said, you know, you think you felt rejected. My parents sent me off to school and when he was in high school, 9th grade, and they sent me to Japan. So I couldn't even go back home. So he never came back for holidays. They couldn't afford that. So he grew up in Japan. And when I say he literally was fluent in Japanese, and because he became like a Japanese citizen, and then he returned when he graduated, and that's where he learned the dental technology. But my dad, when I did anything wrong, I remember the first time I was in 2nd grade. In 1st grade, you know, you get pretty much everyone gets good report cards because they're trying to encourage you. But in 2nd grade, we're getting letter grades. And I remember I got all B's but 2 C's, which is not bad.
Yeah,
you know, it's not bad.
Average,
but you know, but yeah. But my dad said, for those 2 C's, I have to whip you. And so he whipped me for that, and I just freaked out because it was really the first time I really experienced a spanking with a wooden stick.
So he would use a wooden stick, and but you mentioned the word anger.
Oh, he did.
Because of his oppression, because of his temper or whatever.
Oh, he was upset I didn't get any A's, number one.
Right.
And then I got 2 C's, and he would just shove that paper. Why did you get 2 C's? You know, that kind of.
So he would hit you with a wooden spoon on your backside.
No, it was a wooden stick. And later on, it would be a broom. And unfortunately, he hit it. It made so hard it did break. So that's how much power and anger was behind the spanking.
So now you're bringing another element into the home. You talked about absenteeism, your parents working, but now you're talking about abuse.
Yeah,
because I'm sure it wasn't just physical, verbal abuse,
I didn't see
affirmation.
that with my sister, obviously, because she wasn't being in with my brother. My dad treated my mom tremendously well, and to this day, that has impacted me because my dad was such a good
So
husband.
never laid a finger on
Never
your
laid a
mom.
finger on her, never abused her. I don't remember, but maybe one time they got in a big heated argument, which is crazy, because
Right.
most couples.
Right.
And so that's helped me in my relationship with Sue, because I genuinely had a good model when it comes to being a husband. But when it came to children, my dad didn't know what to do, and so he just followed the Bible, spare not the rod, right? And so he used that to correct me, thinking that I was going to be doing it. But because I was feeling so rejected from him by leaving me and not spending any time, if it was affirmation and correction is one thing, because now we know, right, as adults and as a pastor, and how, the more knowledge and wisdom we've gained over the years. But there was no affirmation. I never heard "I love you" until I was 48. I never heard "I'm proud of you" or "Good job, you got a B. That's amazing, wonderful." It
No
was just
encouragement,
no encouragement. It was just
acknowledgement.
anything that was wrong. Never got a hug. Never got a kiss. Not even a handshake. It was a handshake was, like I know some parents will, man up but still shake their hand. But I never
Right.
had physical touch with my dad, except for when he spanked me.
Right. Well, you bring up such an important topic, which is the home, family, right? Being raised in a home, but specifically abuse, absenteeism, right? Rejection. So you're experiencing that in the home, the anger from your father, the abuse from your father at times, right? Where he would reprimand you. And apparently it was specifically you, not so much your sister or your brother,
Yeah, I never
and
saw them get
and
spanked.
not your
I would
mom,
say
right?
one time I saw my sister get spanked because my dad found.
That she was doing your homework. No, I'm kidding.
No, 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 no. They never found that out to this day. But we were so poor. I stole some army toys, these plastic toys.
Little army men, yeah.
Yeah, army men.
Yeah.
And my dad knew he didn't buy it for me. And I just took it from my friends. They had like a whole bag, hundreds of them, so I just took a handful, put it in my pocket, and it went home.
Yeah.
And they also found something. I don't think my sister stole it. I really don't. But it didn't. It was either given to her or somehow it got mixed up with her toys. And so my dad, when he found my toys, he then looked for hers. And she got two
I
toys,
see.
and she got hit twice. And for every toy I had, which was, I don't know how many, maybe a dozen, I got hit. But you know what? It's really funny because even during my rebellious years, I didn't want to steal. There was something but in me where the fear of stealing. So even though I was doing all these drugs and all these rebellious stuff, I just would not steal. I just could not, like, in other words, I couldn't go to the store and just pick something off the shelf and put it under my jacket like everyone else did.
Was that the fear that you felt that your dad would react if he found out?
It's amazing. Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he won't depart from it. And even though he didn't really train me, but it did still give me the awareness that stealing is wrong. It's one of the 10 Commandments. And I wish he had trained me biblically. I look back because I wish I was like you. You gave your life at the age of 4, almost 5. And I regret that I didn't get saved until I was 17 because I made so many mistakes by the time I was 17.
Yeah.
And so I know God will use my testimony to reach people, but personally, my personal feeling, I wish I didn't have to go through all the inner healing deliverance that I went through in the early years of my walk with the Lord. If I had, parents that knew how,
Right.
had the wisdom,
Right.
but they didn't know. They weren't trained themselves. They were
Sure.
part of the World War II upbringing and Depression upbringing. So it's not like their parents were really good at parenting.
No, it's interesting you bringing all this up and processing as you're sharing and trying to articulate out loud what I'm processing. But one of the things that stands out to me, I mentioned at the beginning, there's a stark difference with our upbringings and I didn't know a lot of these things. I didn't even know, even though, of course, I've heard your upbringing, your story many times. But when your mom, one thing that stands out is that your mom used to read a picture Bible to you.
Yes.
And the
yes.
reason why that stands out to me is because you and mom would read a picture Bible to me when I was young. In fact, that's how I got saved.
Right.
Is looking at, I saw,
Right. Exactly.
flipping through the Bible. We did daily devotions, my 3 sisters and I turned to the page of Jesus on the cross. Of course, at that age, I didn't even know who he was or what he was doing. So I called you over.
Right.
I was 3 years old the day before my 4th birthday. But I remember it like it was yesterday, and I called you over. I said, Dad.
By the way, you're way advanced for your age because you were able to comprehend that. That's what blew us away.
Sure, but I think to your point, there was something instilled in you at a young age.
Yeah.
And I think that even though you strayed away after that,
Right.
that biblical foundation.
Oh, I was very conscious. I was very conscious of right and wrong, because of that.
Yeah.
And I always felt guilty when I did something wrong until my conscience became seared and I kept on doing it.
Right.
So the first time I did drugs, I knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
But I was 15. And the first time I got drunk, I knew it was wrong, It was just, I remember the first time I cussed on the school grounds of an elementary school. And I just knew this is bad, filthy, language coming out of my mouth. So.
Yeah, it was your moral compass was being tested. But for me, I can't relate to a lot of what you're sharing.
Sure.
In fact, there's a story. There's a story I actually was thinking of concerning racism and rejection, but the drugs and rebellion, fights, all that I can't relate to, but I can relate to you instilling in my sisters and I the foundation of biblical truth. So going back to that story, I remember I turned to the page of Jesus, didn't know, again, who he was, what he was doing. So I called you over.
Right.
I was 3 years old, the
that,
day before my 4th, this is September 7th, 1983. And I called you over, and I said, Dad, can you explain? I know you read from this book every day in our devotions, but what is this?
Yeah.
And you knew in that moment that it was the right time to share the gospel. And you shared very simply, all you said was this man is Jesus. And the reason why he's doing this, he's on the cross, is because he chose to die for your sins. We actually deserve to die, but he chose. A very simple gospel message. But then you asked me the question that changed my life forever. You said, would you like to accept Jesus into your heart? And right then and there, it's funny, we're talking about the juxtaposition of different backgrounds. I didn't have a lot of sins to confess to at that point. I was only
4 years old.
But also different backgrounds, right? So you just said, Jesus, will you forgive me? Jesus, I repent of all my sins, and I ask you to be Lord of my life, come into my heart. Very simple prayer. And then the next day, on my birthday, I believe it was on my birthday, you baptized
in our
jacuzzi, which was like a pool because it was a huge jacuzzi. And by the grace of God, I've been walking with him ever since. But I hear your story, and again, even though I can't relate to a lot of the things that you explained, some things I can, but I can't relate. I know that there are other people who are listening, who are part of this conversation, who can relate. And so I just wanted just to hone in on a couple topics, if that's okay with you, because it's important. I don't want to just share story without giving people hope, right? We want to give people hope. So when you talk about rejection, absentee father and mother, right? Rejection from your father, abuse from your father, rejection at school, right? Trying to fit in, probably comparison to your sister and your brother who are getting better grades than you.
More later on, but not early on.
Right, but just feeling out of place, coming to America, adjusting to new culture. So I'm sure that these were all contributing factors to your decision to kind of go off on the deep end, right?
Because, I've learned as a pastor, when you feel rejected, you start rebel. And so it's really important to show a lot of affirmation, acceptance, love to your children. And even if you have to correct them, you want to speak the truth in love, you want to correct them in love. And so we made a commitment that we weren't going to spank you in anger. Mm-hmm. We did spank you and the girls. But we would tell you what the rules were. If you run across the street without daddy and mommy with you, that is a no-no, and you will get spanked for that. Mm-hmm. And so, and then when you would run, and again, it was very rare, but we would say, okay, Dad, what did Mom and Dad say that if you did this, we have to spank you. And so we would never do it in anger. We would hit you on the rear end, and just enough for you to feel, and you would start crying, or the girls would start crying, and then we would pray and ask for forgiveness of Jesus, and then we would hold each other and just say, Daddy forgives you, Jesus forgives you, we love you.
The affirmation.
And then you just feel the release from the guilt and condemnation. You just go out and play like nothing happened, you know?
Right.
And that's the way the girls responded as well. And I feel like if it's done with loving correction, the Bible is so true that if you love a child, you'll discipline them diligently. And of course, my dad didn't have the love dimension, the acceptance dimension, and he didn't know how to balance what was abuse versus real discipline that we do need as children. I mean, God disciplines us.
Right.
It says in Proverbs 3:12, whom the Father loves, he disciplines. It's out of love he disciplines us. And so we're to model that. And so because I didn't get that, I started to rebel at a young age. And so that's when, I would say around 4th grade and 5th grade, I started to really go off and just convince my friends to rebel with me. And so I led them in stealing alcohol from their parents, smoking cigarettes, trying to be cool.
And of course, you're underage. This is
we're talking about 10, 9, 10.
Wow.
Yeah,
Really young. Yeah.
I mean, see, the thing about me is that I was really emotionally and maybe mentally more mature than the other kids. Because they looked to me like an adult. And I don't know why, it's just a leadership gift, and I just had a lot of maturity, and I was able to pioneer things. Like I was the first one to do drugs. I was the first one among my friends to lose my virginity. And then I would influence them to follow me. And now, I'm doing that same thing with Christianity.
I want to go back to the topic of rejection, racism, abandonment, abuse. Again, for those who are part of this conversation, joining us at the table, so to speak, listening and hearing this, what are some things that have helped you? You're a father, you're a pastor, but you're also someone who can identify with these very things, even as a child, adjusting to culture. Maybe there's someone listening who just came to America or just moved to another country. There's so many layers, right? So as a father, pastor, and as someone who's also experienced these things, what are some things that you could specifically share that have helped you?
When I encountered Jesus for the first time at the age of 17, I could not stop weeping for 3 days, because for the first time I felt accepted, but it was from God, not from my mom, as much as she was a great mom. And my mom rarely spanked me. She was very, very maternal. It was my dad. And when I left home at the age of 17, it wasn't because I got busted for drugs, because I was tired of the abuse. And so that's why 50,000 kids run away from home every year in America.
So are you saying that your dad was still beating you up till your high school year?
Until I was 17. I was, right before I left home, the big fight is that he caught me and my friend smoking marijuana, which it was nothing new, I got kicked out of my high school because I was the first one to get busted for drugs. So it's not like he did. But I think something triggered in him that I was smoking in his own house, because not at someone else's house or out in the park or in the car. And when he came home, and it was just, the rec room was not a basement, it was a recreation room, was filled with smoke. And he just thought, and rightly so, this is so over the top, it's blatant, it's in your face rebellion. And so my dad grabbed the broomstick and started swinging like a baseball bat at me wildly.
Wow.
My friends all took off when my dad came down with the broomstick. They just all went out the back door. And after he hit me several times, I said, that's it. And I said, I'm leaving. And I walked out the house, and that's how I left home. That was it.
That was the turning point.
That was the turn. I just said, I didn't hit him back. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten, I'm running away now. I just said, that's it. And then I left the house and didn't come back. Now, the problem was, I didn't leave with any money.
Right.
And I was a big drug dealer. I didn't have anything.
You just took off.
I just took off with the clothes on my back. I didn't pack. And so how long are you going to survive that way?
Right.
And so I'm hitchhiking. I go up to Northampton, Massachusetts, because, my sister took care of me, and so I'm visiting her at Smith College. And she's shocked to see me. What happened? And I said, well, I got in a big fight with Dad, and I just left home. She said, well, you can't stay here. It's all girls' college.
Lucky for you, probably.
You could stay maybe one night, which I did.
Yeah.
But she said, they had a student monitor, but also someone that was hired to monitor the dorm rooms. And she said, you'll get caught. I can just hide you for one night. And I said, that's fine. And so then I went to Harvard Square, hung out. The thing that was really crazy, though, is that I convinced my friends to run away with me. Again, my influence. I probably said something like, let's just go party up in Harvard Square, and let's go to see my sister at Smith College. And so we did that, but after they came back, and then I just stayed over at my friend's house. But after 2 weeks, I was totally out of money. I had nothing, and I was getting hungry, and I just said, this is not sustainable. And and this is right in the middle of my junior year in high school, so I'm skipping classes and all that. And so I just made a decision to go back and see if they'll take me in. And so that was a scary moment, because I knocked on the door. I didn't even have the key, and my mom opened the door, and you could see the bags under her eyes, that she had been sleepless ever since I had left.
Crying, sleepless.
Just crying, sleepless. And the first thing she said, you need to talk to your dad. Didn't say welcome home like that. Basically, if your dad will welcome you back, you need to go. So walking up the stairs to my dad's study was like the scariest moment. And when my dad knew it was me. When I knocked on the door, he said, come, and I opened the door. And he wouldn't even look at me. He was just looking at his desk, and he just said, why did you come back? And I said, Dad, I just want to work things out. I didn't tell him the truth. I'm out of money. I'm hungry. I said, Dad, I hope we can work things out. He says, well, you could come back, but you got to promise me you'll not do drugs in the house, because that's what started it all. And I lied to him. I said yes, but I didn't mean it. And so my friends knew I was back in town. I called them, come over to the house and party. So I'm picking up where I left off now. I ate. I took a shower. I'm back in the partying scene. And it was right after that, this is so close to my conversion, that my friends had invited me over. And it was just a bunch of guys smoking from a water pipe and listening to rock and roll music. It wasn't like we were hanging out with girls or doing something that's constructive. It was just monotonous, just getting high. And during that time, going back like a year, I was introduced to Zen Buddhism. And during that time, I had been chanting for like a year, the stupid chant. So I just told the guys, I'm going to go to the other room and meditate. So the house was empty. My friend's parents were out of town. I went to a spare bedroom that was empty, and I sat down on the bed and got into my lotus position and started to do the stupid chant. And after 5 minutes, I said to myself, I've been doing this for a year, and nothing right has gone. They said if you chant, all this blessing will come. And I just said, I've got nothing out of this. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done. And so out of frustration, I just renounced it. I'm not going to do it anymore. But then I turned to God. And I remember looking up at the ceiling and saying this audibly. I said, God, I don't know if you exist. But if you do exist, if what my parents told me as a little boy is true, and there's a heaven and a hell, and Jesus is the way to heaven, well, I don't know, but you got to show me. So I was desperate. I left home, came back. Religion wasn't working. I was tired of the drug scene. And it was at that moment, I didn't expect him to answer me, but he did. And the presence of God came all over me, and I got what Ephesians 1:17 calls the spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of him. I knew it was Jesus. And I could not stop weeping for 3 days, off and on. Just pure love, pure peace, total acceptance. It was like someone was holding me during that whole period. And I didn't know what was going on, why I was crying, because I didn't cry even when my dad would hit me. And I was just sobbing throughout the day. It would come on and off. I wasn't, I would stop, and then the presence of God would come upon me. I would break down and weep again. And I remember just saying, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. In fact, let me tell you what I did was when I had regathered myself in the bedroom, I went back to the party with my best friends and my close friends, and I told them, I said, I found what we're looking for. It's Jesus. Now, my friend, he grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home. Now, he was a drug. He was more of a drug addict than I was. But his father was an Orthodox Jew, and later on he said, "You know what? I haven't even been a good Jew. Let me try Judaism first before I try Christianity." But that's after I witnessed him for like a year. But he just said, "Hey, man, that's cool. You know, I think you took 1-2 toke too much." They thought I flipped out. And they said, "Just sleep it off, just you'll be fine." And I'm just saying to them, I said, "No, I'm serious. I just found what we're all looking for, because I had encountered Jesus."
Yeah.
And so I went home, but the problem was I did not give up the drugs. I was still, doing drugs every day and still partying with my friends. But my conscience was awakened. I wasn't born again, but 2 weeks later.
Okay, now this is the climax of the story of your testimony. We're getting into a whole different topic, which is great, but I did want to reserve that for another conversation.
Okay,
because
sure.
It really deserves all the time and attention
Yeah.
in and of itself. But your point is that when you encounter God at this party scene in the bedroom, this was the first time that you felt true acceptance.
Yes. Pure love.
I mean, all the rejection, all the abandonment, all the abuse that you'd experienced, it was like you said it was as if he was hugging you. As God was.
I mean, it could have been through a Christian that witnessed to me and I experienced it, but I never had that encounter. But I did pure encounter with God himself, with no one else in the room.
Right.
And so when you said, when did I first learn acceptance, was directly from God the Father showing me acceptance and love.
So going back to the question of what would you tell someone who's experienced some similar things, abuse, abandonment, racism, rejection, all those things, the first thing you would say is to turn to God?
I would. Just saying that, why don't you just be honest with God yourself and just ask him to reveal himself to you. And that's what I did. And he revealed himself to me. But I feel now the way we have to show God's love is through our witness of showing acceptance and love as the body of Christ to those who've never experienced it.
Right.
And so that's why Jesus was a friend of sinners, because he wanted to demonstrate it, how to reach out to people and to befriend them. And one of the great lessons I learned, don't expect an unbeliever to act like a believer until they become a believer. A lot of times we won't associate with them because they're still in sin. They still want to get high. They still want to, and we don't condone it. We still speak the truth in love and just say, we feel that's really inappropriate. But let's hang around together and let's go out to get some coffee. Let's get some, but I'm not going to do drugs with you just to show you acceptance, or I'm not going to sleep around with you, to show acceptance. And
That's so good.
But to just, without compromising, demonstrate the love to Jesus Christ.
So it's really twofold. And there's so many things that you could probably give as pieces of advice or encouragement. But one is to call on the name of the Lord. It's very simple, right?
Yeah. Whoever calls my name, Lord, will be saved.
Right.
It begins right there. He wants you to call upon him.
But you couldn't really even articulate at that party except just to say, God, if you're real, it's very simple, reveal yourself to me.
Yeah.
And right then and there, he did. So it comes through just a simple prayer, crying out to God, reveal yourself to me, reveal your love to me, and believe that he will. Of course, there's the piece of accepting him into your heart, which is, we'll talk about your actual conversion another time. But then to turn around and almost as if you've said to me ever since I was a kid, to learn to come in the opposite spirit. So if you've experienced rejection, one of the ways that you can heal or be restored from that is to show acceptance, right? To show the opposite to others. I would add to all of that, because those are great things. Those two things are great. But I was just thinking, even on the drive over here, what has helped me? Now, if I could actually share a funny story.
You're a better pastor than I am.
No,
so you tell me.
I wouldn't say that, but I was thinking, because there's such a stark difference with our backgrounds, and I was even thinking, what is an example that I can even share about rejection that I faced or racism that I faced? The closest thing I could ever think was And I would call this is not in your social studies textbook, those who are listening, but it was indirect racism. And this is what happened. So years ago, when Paul was living with us, and Paul came to America from Korea to study in American school, to
learn
go
English
to learn English. And so he was living with our family. So I remember one time I was in the car and I was driving outside. We were pulling out of the parking garage in Old Town, right? And this is back in the day when there used to be people at the little booth to take your ticket and you can pay them. Nowadays it's all electronic. So Paul's sitting in the passenger seat, again, in America. I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 months when he had just come, and so he's still getting used to the culture and everything. And as I'm about to pull out of the garage, someone out of nowhere just cuts me off and almost hits the car. And I couldn't believe, I was so and they went through. So the lady at the booth, and she's a Hispanic lady, and I'll share there's a reason why I say that. She's a Hispanic lady. She's sitting there and she's just eating this bag of Cheetos, just minding her own business, eating a bag of Cheetos. And I was so frustrated, I had to get it off my chest. So I look at her, I said, "Did you just see that driver almost hit me?" And without missing a beat or looking at me, she goes, "Yeah, he must be Asian." That's literally what came out of her mouth. Then she looks at me, realizes that I'm Asian, and then goes, I thought you were Hispanic, like her, right? Because she's Hispanic. She said, I thought you were, but she didn't see Paul sitting in the passenger seat, who definitely doesn't look Hispanic. He leans over and he goes, "Thanks a lot." and I'm sitting there, and then we drive out, and it's a funny story. In fact, I got his permission, by the way, to share that story. He's in Korea right now, still very close to the family, but that's the closest thing I think I can think of to experiencing, in this case, indirect racism. It was stereotyping. But kids nowadays, you think about it, cyberbullying is a big deal, right? You can literally ridicule someone for their looks, what they look like, for something they say, and they don't even have to know who you are. They don't even have to have even an idea of what you look like. And this is going on in our schools. This is going on with our young people. Of course, regular bullying, fighting, name shaming is a big deal. I know a lot of kids grow up in culture where because of social media, they're pressured to look a certain way, to act a certain way. So there's so much really pressure and challenge with young people specifically. So I would add to the two things that you said that has helped me, even though, again, I can't relate to a lot of what you shared in your story, is just to talk. That's been so healing for me with other things in my life that I've experienced, is just to open up, just to go to someone and say, "Hey, I experienced this," or "Hey, this is how I feel." You know, even our marriage therapist recently, because I believe just like a car needs to be taken in to get tuned up, it's important to get tune-ups. And so one of the things that has been important for our marriage is just to be able to be vulnerable with someone. And just to say, "Hey, can you give me some counsel? Can you give me some advice? And can you share from your experience?" And so for me to add to the things that you shared, I think is really helpful, is just to talk. I think when you bottle it up, when you suppress it, then there is the potential for lashing out, getting into fights, rebelling, getting into substance abuse in your case, right? So to talk, to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to find someone you can trust, to say,
"But it takes a lot of EQ to do that, emotional problem.
Of course.
It takes a lot of maturity.
That's the irony, right? When you're dealing with rejection, you have to overcome that to even open. Well, Dad, listen, I know just like when we're at home, we could just talk for hours, but we do want to bring this conversation to a close. And of course,
we could pick up later.
Yeah, we could pick up later. There's more details to share. Some of the things you shared were just, again, I want to know more about. But I want to thank you again for sharing your story, sharing even some of the hard parts of your story, and being vulnerable about that.
As long as it could help and serve people, I'm willing to share the good, bad, and the ugly.
That's right. I mean, all of us have that as part of our stories. So love you, Dad. Again, thank you for the conversation.
Oh, love
Cheers.
you. I'm so proud of you, son.
Love you.
Yeah, love you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on the Honest Podcast. Listen, if today's conversation impacted you and you would like to have a personal relationship with Jesus, or if you'd like to rededicate your life to Him, I want to invite you to pray a simple prayer. Just repeat after me. Heavenly Father, thank you for sending your Son, Jesus, to die on the cross for me. I repent of all my sins, and I ask you to be Savior and Lord of my life. And by your grace, I will follow you and love you all the days of my life. In Jesus' name, amen. If you pray that prayer for the first time or as a rededication, I just want to say congratulations. This is the best decision you could ever make. I want to encourage you to do 3 things now that you've prayed this prayer. Number 1, spend time with God. The more you spend time with Him, the more you get to know Him, and the more you become like Him. We're also going to leave some resources below in the description to help you on your journey. Number 2, get plugged into a local church. You want to find community and you want to do life with other brothers and sisters in Christ. And number 3, continue to tune in to the Honest Podcast, as we're going to discuss many topics that are going to help you in life, but most importantly in your journey and your walk with God. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.